This is footage from the 2019 meeting between Vladimir Putin and Khabib Nurmagomedov and his father Abdulmanap Nurmagomedov. During the conversation, Putin congratulated Khabib on his convincing win over Dustin Poirier. Dana White also said that Putin gifted Nurmagomedov real estate worth over $20 million. There were no signs of trouble at that time. However, 3 to 4 years later, Khabib ended up angering Putin, which forced him to leave the country. Based on his Instagram activity, it appears he left Russia for a while and relocated to the UAE. On top of that, he reportedly owed the government a lot of money. Meanwhile, local TV presenters were openly mocking and insulting Khabib, which was a drastic change from the admiration he used to get. But the most shocking part came from his own people. Many residents of Dagestan, who once saw him as a national hero, turned against him. They accused Khabib of betraying their trust and abandoning his roots, all because of one critical mistake. Part 1. War. The war between Russia and Ukraine began on February 24, 2022. Russia invaded Ukraine, a neighboring country often called a brother nation. Hundreds of tanks and thousands of military personnel crossed the border into Ukraine and started moving towards the capital, Kyiv. At the time, Western countries tried to stop Russia from continuing their actions by threatening them with sanctions and an economic blockade. But nothing seems to stop Russia. The army continues to storm Ukraine. To keep the peace, stability, and harmony within the country, the Russian government relies on propaganda and active agitation in support of the war. You'll see how this relates to Khabib Nurmagomedov very soon. Part 2. Celebrities. Next, celebrities and influencers started to emerge as key figures. People who can make an impact on public opinion. Artists, YouTubers, actors, and other public figures began supporting the government in large numbers. They said that Ukrainians are fascists, and that all their actions are tricks set up by the West. They even said that Russia needs to destroy Ukraine for the sake of future peace in the world. The only way for these public figures to survive in such conditions was to fully support the Russian army. Otherwise, the Russian government could destroy them and close any opportunities for them in the country. You probably already realized that they tried to recruit Khabib as well, to turn him into a war propagandist. But Khabib wasn't in a rush to make a statement and kept his opinion to himself. Part 3. The army is being mobilized in Dagestan. By September 2022, the offensive had lost its momentum. The war had shifted from a fast-paced attack to a more strategic approach. To keep up the pressure on the front lines, Russia needed to have reserves that could advance and capture one city after another. So, Russia started partial mobilization. They planned to recruit men with military experience from all over Russia. But this wave of mobilization had a particularly strong impact on Dagestan, the homeland of Khabib. As it turned out, the mobilization wasn't partial, but general, at least in Dagestan. As it happened, all the men in the region were sent to war without any regard for who was most needed. As a result, there were lots of protests, and it was mainly women who took part. At the time, men were taken to military recruitment offices and prepared for war. The protesters chanted, "No to war," "No to mobilization," and "Our children are not fertilizer." When a few hundred demonstrators gathered near the puppet theater, the police started making arrests. The people of Dagestan didn't know who to reach out to for help. The local government wasn't on their side. Moscow said the mobilization was going according to plan, while local police used force to suppress the riot. In a desperate attempt to gain support, the protesters had an idea. Why not reach out to their local hero, UFC champion Khabib Nurmagomedov? Part 4. Khabib is a national hero, or is he? Khabib has always been known for having strong opinions. He's even criticized concerts of Russian pop stars, which eventually got canceled. He said that they're bad for young people and he doesn't like their music. He also criticized French President Emmanuel Macron on Instagram when President Macron didn't ban caricatures of the Prophet Muhammad. In general, Khabib has always been vocal about his views on various issues and has never been afraid to express them.
Here is like, I see only women and men. There is no between.
Got it.
While there were protests and harsh detentions in Dagestan, Khabib posted on Instagram photos and videos from his meetings in a restaurant, as well as clips of his training sessions. It's clear he was abroad. In a moment of shock, People from Dagestan began asking for help from their hero, who was never afraid to speak out. This is what they had to say in the comments on Instagram. Khabib, you've had the support of the people of Dagestan for a long time. It's time to stand up for them too. Khabib, can you tell us a bit about the protest? You're the champion, after all. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. I don't want to be disappointed in you. On the other hand, Khabib was already facing pressure from the Putin government. They were counting on him to back the war and mobilization. They knew his words could calm the people of Dagestan and boost morale in general. It's been reported that Nurmagomedov received personal phone calls from Anton Vaino, head of the presidential administration, and his first deputy Sergei Kirienko. Part 5. Khabib made a decision. People and religious groups in Dagestan quickly lost confidence in Khabib Nurmagomedov. He chose to stay silent and turn a blind eye to the mourning and widespread detentions. Russian propagandists and talk show hosts started openly criticizing the UFC champion for not supporting the war. They said he didn't respect the country's politics. But Khabib, facing pressure from all sides, did eventually make a decision. Ultimately, he decided to stay silent. This silence eventually had consequences. The Russian authorities presented Nurmagomedov with tax claims for 306 million rubles. It's also worth noting that sheriffs have seized Nurmagomedov's assets, including property worth 79 million rubles. The authorities also seized the fighter's family home in Dagestan and his fleet of expensive cars. Although the official line is that the debt came down to unpaid taxes on income from abroad, it seems the government was punishing the fighter for disobedience in a rather harsh way. But there's still a lot of crime and corruption in Russia, and the government can make up cases and go after those who don't obey the rules. In addition to losing his assets, Khabib was also forced to shut down all his businesses in Russia as part of the government's retribution. So, once a friend and supporter of Putin is no longer in favor with the government, it's like he's a persona non grata, and he's now being hunted down. A friend and hero of Russia is now an outcast, a criminal, and a traitor. But why didn't Khabib make an official statement? He should have explained his point of view in a nutshell. What was he so afraid of? Does he actually support war or not? Part 6. Khabib leaves Russia. Khabib realized it wasn't safe for him to stay in his home country, so he moved to the United Arab Emirates, where he's still respected as a hero. Of course, he's a devout Muslim, he promotes similar values, and he's a big name in the sport. It's possible he got a UAE passport pretty quickly, just like Khamzat Chimaev did, who got rid of his Swedish citizenship and got an Arab passport in just a few days. If you have sheikh friends, these kinds of issues are easily resolved. It's also worth mentioning that these sheikhs are fans of mixed martial arts. So, the UFC champion was enjoying life, traveling the world, performing, playing sports, and generally living his best life. He's already distanced himself from Russia, and now he's opening new businesses in other countries too. For instance, Khabib recently announced the launch of a chain of kebab shops in Kazakhstan, where he has a clean record. But in reality, he was still facing a number of challenges. The Eastern culture is all about family, so we can assume he was really missing his homeland and loved ones. It's likely that his mother and family were waiting for him back home. Khabib is not the kind of person who would abandon his homeland and loved ones. That's why he was working on a new plan. Part 7. Khabib's plan. Years later, when the situation had calmed down a bit, Khabib began exploring ways to return to Russia, and he was likely reaching out to all his contacts. First of all, he's got a good relationship with the president of Chechnya and Putin's best friend, Ramzan Kadyrov. Khabib managed to find a way to re-establish relations with Russia. He agreed to repay the debt to the state, paying 79.3 million rubles instead of the original 302 million rubles. By that time, the information attack had lost steam, and people's anger had eased up a bit. Khabib was free to come and go as he pleased in his hometown and country. It looked like it all went as well as could be expected. A smooth return, the resolution of all disagreements, and no outstanding debt. It would seem that he should be feeling calm. But despite his silence on the matter, he was still troubled by thoughts of war. He's still got the war situation with Ukraine on his mind. Part 8. Khabib and the war. Khabib didn't express his opinion publicly, But he did approach the issue from a different angle. While he was at a UFC tournament in the US, he spoke to Donald Trump. Trump is actually a big fan of Khabib Nurmagomedov, by the way. They ended up having a conversation.
You know, it's very interesting though. So Khabib came up to me after the fight the other night, and he said to me, "Oh, I hope you can get in because we have to stop the wars. We have to stop the killing, the killing." He was so smart. He understood it. He said, "We have to stop the killing," and it's true. And I think I'd have that war stopped if I was president-elect. Right after the election, if I win, I will get that war stopped. I'll get it stopped fast before I get to office. If it's not stopped before then.
Talking about Russia, Ukraine.
I'm talking about Russia, Ukraine.
The Russian propagandists have already started using this story again to criticize the champion. But that hasn't stopped Khabib. He's still looking for ways to end the war. Part 9. Khabib and Ukraine. Khabib has strong ties to Ukraine and may even have claimed Ukrainian citizenship. His father, Abdulmanap Nurmagomedov, served in Afghanistan and then went on to study at Poltava University of Economics and Trade, where he got interested in judo. He could have stayed in Ukraine, but he returned to Dagestan because of his mother's illness and opened his own gym there. Nurmagomedov himself started training in mixed martial arts in Ukraine and was a member of a Ukrainian club. Khabib Nurmagomedov's uncle, Nurmagomed, was registered in Poltava until at least 2022. His other uncle, Alex, is a Ukrainian citizen. Maybe it's this close connection with the Ukrainian people that's stopping Khabib from openly supporting Russia in this war. On the other hand, Khabib fears punishment for speaking out, pressure on behalf of his loved ones, and the possibility of never being able to return to his homeland. And we don't even know what he really thinks about what's going on. This story shows that staying silent is also an option, and it's usually not the best choice. Ultimately, aligning with a particular group provides a sense of support and community, but if you don't choose a side, you're seen as an enemy by all of them. Silence doesn't show your true position. It just shows that you're afraid of not being accepted. It's even possible that if Khabib had expressed his true position, others would have followed him, and it could have created a domino effect. After all, there's already been a similar situation in history. Muhammad Ali was unafraid to speak out against wars and explained that no nation had done him harm. His unwavering stance inspired many people, including youth and anti-war activists. But what do we end up with? A complete severing of ties with his main associate, Vladimir Putin, and at the same time, a lack of support from the people who saw the lack of concern from their former idol.